Hey everybody, welcome back to Life with Zach. Today I'm bringing you the next in our series of local history shorts related to Shenandoah County here in Virginia. Now this one is talking about a resort called Berners Resort in a place called Fort Valley. You can see the one image that we have that exists of Berners Resort on your screen, and that is a lithograph shown courtesy of the Shenandoah County Library, who has their collection available digitally at archives.countylib.org. Now, Berners Resort started in 1850 when a guy named Noah Berner, who lived in Fort Valley, built a resort in this location in that community. Now, if you know anything about Shenandoah County, Fort Valley is considered a valley within a valley. It's on the eastern portion of the county along the border with Warren County and Page County. And it's kind of a more isolated area, but it also is known for its natural beauty, its scenic overlooks. It's known for its, and in the 19th century, it was known for kind of its healthy climate. It has a cooler temperature in the summer. It's not swampy or anything like that, and it's less populated. So it was kind of this rustic, rural area within a rustic rural area that people could go to and enjoy. And in Fort Valley, near what is now known as Seven Fountains, was a spring. And this spring was the site of Berners Resort because during the 19th century, people really believed in the medicinal properties of various springs and various types of waters, that if you drank them or you swam in them or you relaxed near them, that they would help really almost any ailment that affected you. So people believe that different springs and things have medicinal properties that can magically cure what was wrong with you. And, today we know that some of these springs do have some healing properties in terms of they're able to relax you and lower your blood pressure and make you feel better and things like that. We know that a lot of what they believed it would cure, it really doesn't. But these springs had the potential to draw a lot of people, especially wealthy people who wanted to come visit them and enjoy themselves and perhaps seek some healing waters. So again, Noah Berner in 1850 builds a resort near what is now Seven Fountains within Fort Valley. And it was early on known as Berner's Sulphur Springs, or alternatively, sometimes Shenandoah Springs in various advertisements. And it promoted being known for hospitable welcomes, blazing fires, delicious food, and of course, the springs itself. And these were things that people were looking for in a resort then, and people are looking for today. If you're going somewhere, you want people to be hospitable, you want good staff. The idea of these blazing fires outside that you could sit around and enjoy yourself in the evenings, that it would be warm and cozy, even in this area that was sometimes cool during the summertime, and that you had great food to eat. So the reality is the waters, as they called them, or the springs, attracted people, but so did the idea of just going out into the country, being comfortable, have someone take care of you, and enjoying just some relaxing atmosphere. Of course, one of the major attractions was the mineral waters. And there were these spas that were going up all over the area. And Noah, he had made this fortune in land speculation, but he found out that this property he owned had 6 different mineral springs on it. Okay. And he actually found within like a close proximity, and he actually found a 7th nearby. So what he did, being the business person that he was, he realized, hey, if I'm able to bring together 7 different types of water into one location, that's 7 times the attraction of a single spring. Okay. So you have all these other resorts that have 1 spring, maybe 2 springs, but my goodness, now I have 7 springs that I can bring together. So he laid some pipe to bring that 7th spring in and created this resort. And it was built the geographic area it was built in was called a bowl-like hollow. And he put up a main hotel for people to stay at, some individual cottages for families and things, bathhouses to enjoy these springs, and pavilions. Now, these pavilions were not exactly what we would anticipate like a picnic shelter or pavilion today, but they were places where there might be dances or you might eat kind of an inside out in an inside outside atmosphere. The big hotel itself was 3 stories and was over 12,000 square feet. So this wasn't a little tiny resort. It was a huge undertaking in a local rural area like Fort Valley. And it was probably the biggest building in Fort Valley and probably the whole of Shenandoah County at the time. And all construction was done by either local carpenters or a large group of enslaved people that Noah owned or rented to complete the project, either directly or through his subcontractors. Now, this resort, because it was big, it had the attractions, it had the 7 springs, everything that Noah knew that other people were going to want, was very popular. There were stages that would come in daily from Strasburg through Waterlick down into Fort Valley. They would come into Woodstock across what is now Woodstock Tower Road, or they would come from Page County, or what is now Page County, into the resort. There was a brass band that the hotel had that was there for when people came in or when people left. They would play at regular times. They would play in the hotel's ballrooms. Families would come for the whole summer. So if you were wealthy enough, it was popular that in the summertime, you would get away from the heat of the city or the coastal area that you might live in where your plantation was or where you might be running your business or something. And you would come to a cooler area like this and just spend the whole summer. And you would live in a cottage and you enjoy the cooler temperatures and being outside. And there would be a social aspect to that because your friends from wherever you were or people in your class would be there, and you would spend time with them and do things like dancing and playing cards and eating food and just having a good time together. Berner in 1851, his rates were $6 per week, $20 per month, or $36 for 2 months, which doesn't seem like a lot today, but would have been a lot of money in 1851. He also charged extras for horses because they would have to be boarded, servants, and enslaved people. There were different rates for all 3 of those groups. And he was hosting between 300 and 600 guests a season. So that's a lot of people. You got to say, even if at $20 a month, 300 people staying would have been $6,000 a month. So that's a really sizable income for people at the time period. So there were a lot of people, and Berner's Resort was popular with people all over the state, and people in other states that would come here. Now, despite his success at attracting guests, Berner was not able to make the hotel into a financial success. He was forced to sell a portion, like an interest or stock in his hotel for in 1852 for $12,000 to pay off some of the debts, because we don't know exactly how much it costs to build the resort, but the reality is to build something that big from scratch was very, very, very expensive. Okay. And 5 years later, in 1857, he had to sell the rest of the resort. He was forced to by his creditors in the court. So you can see that he wasn't really able to recoup the money that he put into this resort, even though it was incredibly popular. And he also had to sell some other land. And he turned the resort operations over to a guy named Solomon McInturf and left to go out west. Now, 4 years after this happens, in 1861, the Civil War breaks out, and that devastated Berner's Resort. It had been kind of thriving. It was rebuilding after all this debt issue, And then the Civil War happens and they're forced to close because no one is traveling in the same way that they were. And unlike some other resorts that were able to basically stay afloat by becoming hospitals or becoming government officers or things, because Berners Resort was so isolated and the roads connecting it were so poor, that really wasn't an option. And there wasn't a population center around there to support things. It was really in the middle of nowhere. So they did reopen it after the Civil War ends, but it was unable to regain its former prominence. People had really forgotten about it. It had kind of become run down a little bit, and other newer places were opening that were more popular to visit. There's some of the families continue to come, but it just didn't make it. And it closed sometime in the 1870s or early 1880s. And then the hotel in the 1880s was demolished. They reused the lumber to make other structures in the community, and the resort just kind of vanished from the Fort Valley landscape. Today, the only thing that remains are the materials that were reused in other structures from the area. Sometimes those pop up and can be proven that that structure was made using materials from Berners Resort, including several building and houses that are on the site. There's also some remaining pipe that was used to bring in the fountains, and then or the springs, and then of course the water themselves still flow, but they aren't used in the same ways that they were at the time. They're not piped in, and there's no bathhouses or anything else that remains that people could utilize these springs. So, unfortunately, not a lot remains about Berners Resort. And among many in the local population and people from around the state who may have had a connection to it, it was really forgotten. But for about 2 decades, from 1850 to about 1870 or a little after, it was a huge part of Shenandoah County's history. And it was a huge part of the kind of the social scene and the resort scene in the state of Virginia, competing with other resorts, and kind of a precursor to a more popular and still open resort, Orkney Springs, which also exists in Shenandoah County. I hope you enjoyed this video talking about Burner Resort, or Seven Fountains, or Shenandoah Springs, kind of alternative names, located in Fort Valley community in Shenandoah County, Virginia. If you do, be sure to hit like for this video, leave a comment with any questions or anything else you know about Berners Resort, or anything else you want to share about springs in Virginia. And subscribe, as there'll be other videos about our local history coming out that I hope you'll enjoy. Have a great day.